Lena stood in the kitchen, her hands resting on the cool marble countertop as she stirred the sauce slowly, trying to focus on the task while her mind swirled with thoughts she couldn't shake. The quiet hum of the refrigerator and the soft patter of rain against the window creating a kind of rhythm that both calmed and unsettled her at the same time. She had always loved rainy evenings for the way they slowed the world, giving her moments to reflect, to breathe, but tonight, the rain only seemed to amplify the heaviness in her chest, the constant pull of emotions that had been building ever since she married Thomas and became part of a new family, one she had embraced with hope but also with hesitation, unsure if she would ever truly find her place. She glanced at the clock on the wall, the minute hand creeping forward, each tick reminding her that time moved on whether she was ready or not, and she thought about how much had changed in the past few months, how she had gone from living a quiet, predictable life alone to navigating the complexities of marriage, step-parenting, and the subtle, almost imperceptible shifts in the dynamics of her household, and she wondered if she was handling it all well, if she was enough for Thomas, for Oliver, her stepson, whose presence was both comforting and challenging in ways she didn't fully understand. She remembered the first day she met Oliver, the cautious way he had looked at her, the polite but guarded smile that had barely reached his eyes, and how she had felt a mix of relief and anxiety, wanting to be accepted yet fearing she might never truly fit in. And now, standing in the kitchen alone with the warm scent of basil and garlic filling the air, she realized how much she had come to care for him, how his laughter had started to feel like part of the heartbeat of her home, and how moments like this, quiet and unassuming, made her realize that family wasn't just about blood. It was about the little connections, the shared glances, the conversations that weren't forced but simply happened, growing naturally, organically, and yet, as much as she appreciated the bond forming between them, she also knew there were limits, boundaries that she could not cross, lines drawn by circumstance and social expectation, and the thought of these boundaries made her chest tighten in a way she couldn't ignore, a subtle ache of longing mixed with apprehension, a reminder that the heart could feel more than the mind allowed, and that sometimes the simplest moments could carry the heaviest weight. She took a deep breath and shook her head slightly, trying to focus on the sauce again, trying to let the mundane task anchor her to the present, when suddenly, she heard footsteps approaching, the soft scuff of sneakers on tile, cautious but deliberate, and she felt a flicker of curiosity, a spark of anticipation she couldn't explain, and then, "Hey Lena," a voice called, calm but hesitant, familiar and yet carrying a weight she couldn't immediately place, and she turned to see Oliver stepping into the kitchen, droplets of rain clinging to his hair, damp coat hanging from his shoulders, and something in his expression made her pause, a mix of hesitation and determination, as if he had been holding on to a question for days, maybe weeks, waiting for the right moment, and she realized that this was one of those rare moments where the world seemed to narrow, the rain, the lights, the quiet hum of the house fading into the background as she focused entirely on him, on what he might say, on what could happen in the next few minutes. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice low, almost shy, yet carrying an urgency that made her heart skip, and she nodded, sensing immediately that this was not a casual question, that something important, something meaningful, was about to unfold, and for a moment she felt a rush of nervous energy, the kind that comes before a life-changing conversation, before a revelation that could shift relationships and feelings in ways you cannot anticipate. She gestured toward the small table near the window, the one with the worn wooden chairs and the faint smell of old polish, and he moved closer, sitting down with hands clasped loosely in his lap, eyes flicking briefly to the rain outside before returning to her. And Lena felt a mix of protectiveness and curiosity, wondering what thoughts had been weighing on him, what emotions had been brewing behind that polite, controlled exterior. And as he began to speak, haltingly at first, words tumbling out in fragments, she listened intently, her heart tightening and loosening in waves as he admitted things she had suspected but never dared to name, things about feelings, connections, and confusion that left them both suspended in a delicate balance of truth and fear, and she realized that this conversation was more than just words. It was a bridge being built between two hearts, fragile yet persistent, a bridge that required courage, honesty, and an openness that neither of them had fully practiced before. She leaned forward slightly, not wanting to interrupt, letting him find the words in his own time, and as the minutes stretched, the rain outside forming a gentle curtain against the window, she noticed the subtle shifts in his posture, the way his hands trembled slightly, the way his eyes occasionally darted away before returning to hers, full of unspoken questions, full of vulnerability, full of hope that she might understand, that she might accept, that somehow this conversation could bring them closer without causing harm or heartbreak. And as he finally looked up, meeting her gaze fully, she felt a strange warmth in her chest, a mixture of tenderness and longing, the kind that makes you acutely aware of every heartbeat, every breath, every word, and she knew that whatever he said next would mark the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter that was uncertain, complicated, and beautiful in its honesty. And in that moment, Lena understood that sometimes the most profound connections are forged in quiet, ordinary places. A kitchen on a rainy evening, a shared glance, a simple question asked with courage, and that these moments, fleeting and delicate, can linger in memory long after the words have faded, shaping hearts and lives in ways you cannot predict, ways that are both thrilling and terrifying. And as Oliver's next words hovered on the edge of the air between them, Lena felt the world hold its breath with her. The warm light of the kitchen wrapping around them, the rain's soft melody echoing in the background, and she realized, with a mix of fear and anticipation, that this kitchen chat would be one she would never forget, a beginning without a clear end, a story of emotion and connection unfolding one word, one glance, one heartbeat at a time. And as he finally spoke, his words trembling but earnest, Lena felt something shift inside her, a door opening to feelings she had not allowed herself to explore, a quiet recognition of vulnerability, a gentle thrill of discovery. And though the conversation was only just beginning, the weight of its importance pressed on her chest, both comforting and unnerving, a reminder that love, longing, and human connection often arrive quietly, unexpectedly, and sometimes the simplest question in the simplest place can change everything. Lena sat across from Oliver at the small kitchen table, the rain still tapping softly against the windows, and she could feel the quiet tension between them, a mixture of unspoken feelings and cautious curiosity, the air thick with emotion as he fidgeted with the edge of his sleeve, staring at the polished wood of the table like it held the answers to questions he couldn't yet say aloud. For a moment, silence stretched longer than either of them expected, and Lena wondered how many times she had imagined this conversation, rehearsed the right words, the calm tone, the careful boundaries, and yet nothing she had prepared for could match the reality of Oliver looking at her with that vulnerable, searching expression, the kind of look that makes your chest ache and your mind race at the same time. And she realized that this was not a normal parent-child conversation. It was something deeper, something complicated, and she had to tread carefully, balancing empathy with restraint, warmth with caution, because feelings once voiced could shift everything, and she wanted to honor his honesty without crossing lines that should never be crossed. Finally, Oliver spoke, his voice low and hesitant. I've been noticing things, feelings, things I can't explain. And Lena felt her heart jump, her stomach twist, not with shock but with recognition, because she had sensed it too, the quiet moments of connection, the way their conversations lingered, the stolen glances when Thomas was out or busy, the subtle gestures that spoke more than words ever could. And now, hearing him say it aloud made everything suddenly urgent, real, undeniable, and she had to take a deep breath, steady her voice, steady her racing thoughts, and respond in a way that was kind but careful, because this was uncharted territory for both of them, a delicate dance of honesty, emotion, and restraint, and one wrong word could shatter the fragile trust between them, the trust that had taken months to build through small acts of kindness, shared laughter, quiet moments in the kitchen, and the occasional heartfelt talk that hinted at more than ordinary familial love. Oliver's eyes met hers again, wide and searching, full of hope and fear at the same time. And Lena noticed the subtle tremor in his fingers as he reached for his cup of tea, a nervous gesture that mirrored her own internal tension, and she realized how much courage it had taken for him to speak, how heavy it must have felt to carry these feelings alone, and she felt a sudden surge of protectiveness, a desire to hold him close and reassure him that he was seen, that he was heard, without giving in to impulses that would complicate everything. And she struggled with the mix of emotions swirling inside her. Longing, attraction, care, fear, and the quiet, persistent pull of human connection that defied rules and logic, and she reminded herself again that boundaries mattered, that love could be complex, but actions must be measured, choices deliberate, and words chosen with care. Oliver shifted in his seat, his gaze flicking to the floor, then back to her, and he said, "I don't want to make things awkward. I had to tell someone." And Lena nodded slowly, understanding completely, because there was something liberating about voicing what had been hidden, something that allowed the heart to breathe, even if the mind still questioned, even if the world outside demanded restraint. and she leaned forward slightly, offering a gentle smile, soft encouragement, letting him know that his honesty was safe with her, while also silently reminding herself to maintain the boundaries that kept them both grounded, that respected the family they were part of, the life they were trying to build together with Thomas, a life that needed balance, trust, and mutual respect. As the words hung in the air, Lena felt the energy between them shift, subtle but undeniable, a quiet tension that was not uncomfortable, not threatening, but charged with the potential of deep emotional connection, a mix of longing and restraint that made every small gesture, every glance, every movement significant, and she realized that their bond was evolving, moving into a space where emotions could no longer be ignored, where careful acknowledgement of feelings was necessary to prevent misunderstanding, hurt, or regret, and she understood that this conversation was not just about confessions or curiosities. It was about defining the unspoken rules of their relationship, about recognizing that hearts could feel deeply even when circumstances demanded caution, and that navigating these feelings required honesty, patience, and a shared commitment to emotional integrity. Oliver took a deep breath, as if summoning courage for the next words, and Lena felt a shiver of anticipation, the kind that comes when two people stand at the edge of truth, aware of the delicate line between expression and consequence, between longing and propriety, and she waited, giving him space, letting him choose how much to reveal, knowing that rushing him could break the fragile trust forming in the quiet warmth of the kitchen, and as he spoke again, his voice steadier, more deliberate, he admitted, "Sometimes I feel closer to you than I expected, and I don't know how to handle it." And Lena's chest tightened with recognition, with the echo of her own feelings that she had tried to suppress, the quiet attraction that was innocent yet undeniable, the tenderness that had grown in moments of shared laughter, in small confessions, in gestures of care and attention that carried more weight than either of them had anticipated, and she understood in that instant that the conversation they were having was a turning point, a moment that would define their connection, that required courage, honesty, and careful navigation of emotions too complex for simple labels. She reached across the table, placing a hand lightly near his, not touching fully, just close enough to convey comfort, presence, and understanding, and Oliver looked at her, his eyes wide, vulnerable, grateful, and for a moment, the world outside disappeared, the rain a gentle backdrop, the kitchen lights warm and steady, and it was just them, two people sharing the fragile, complicated truth of their hearts, recognizing the tension between desire and propriety, between longing and responsibility, and Lena felt an odd mixture of relief, excitement, and fear, knowing that their bond had grown deeper, richer, and more nuanced than before, that acknowledgement of feelings had changed the energy in the room, that this simple conversation carried weight far beyond its words, and that moving forward would require honesty, patience, and respect for the boundaries that governed their lives, for Thomas, for the family they were part of, and for the delicate balance of hearts caught between connection and circumstance. Oliver exhaled slowly, as if a weight had lifted, and Lena mirrored the gesture, feeling a quiet sense of closeness, a gentle understanding, a shared awareness that they could be honest without immediately acting, that feelings could exist without disrupting the life they were part of, and that acknowledgement itself could be a form of care, a bridge toward trust, intimacy, and emotional safety, and she knew that what mattered was not what they felt in the moment, but how they chose to navigate those feelings together, with patience, empathy, and courage, and she smiled softly, a reassuring, quiet smile that said, "I hear you, I understand you, and I will be here." And Oliver's shoulders relaxed slightly, tension easing, the faintest smile appearing on his lips, a sign of relief, connection, and mutual respect, and for a long moment they simply sat, breathing, listening, feeling, the kitchen becoming a sacred space for honesty, for emotion, for trust, for the unspoken understanding that hearts could speak in ways words sometimes failed, and Lena realized that this conversation, these confessions, this delicate emotional exchange, would stay with her forever, shaping the way she felt, the way she thought about Oliver, the way she approached love, longing, and human connection, and she knew that while the path ahead was uncertain, complicated, and fraught with challenges, the act of opening their hearts, even cautiously, even carefully, was a step toward understanding, empathy, and emotional maturity, and that in itself was a gift, a moment of profound human truth, a memory that would linger in the quiet corners of her heart, just like the soft rhythm of rain against the windows, steady, comforting, and impossible to forget, a reminder that honesty, even in complexity, is a bridge, a balm, a way to honor feelings without breaking the delicate structures of life, family, and love. And as Oliver finally leaned back in his chair, exhaling the last of his tension, Lena knew that the kitchen had witnessed something extraordinary, something quiet but monumental, a moment that would define the emotional landscape of their relationship, a conversation that would be remembered, revisited, and cherished, a turning point where hearts were acknowledged, emotions validated, and boundaries respected. And she felt a mix of sadness, excitement, longing, and peace, knowing that this was only the beginning, that the story of their connection had grown richer, deeper, more complex, and infinitely more human, and that navigating it would require courage, honesty, patience, and love in its many forms, subtle and overt, quiet and intense, but always present, always significant, always shaping who they were and who they could become together, even if the path was winding, uncertain, and filled with questions. And as the rain continued to fall, a soft, persistent reminder of the world outside and the life moving forward, Lena and Oliver sat in quiet companionship, hearts full, minds racing, emotions raw yet tempered, knowing that the kitchen chat they were having was not just a conversation, but a milestone, a memory, a step into a future where honesty, understanding, and emotional courage would guide them. And for Lena, that was both terrifying and beautiful, a paradox of human connection that left her breathless, thoughtful, and utterly aware of the fragile, potent, and unforgettable nature of what was unfolding between them. The days after that kitchen conversation passed in a blur for Lena, each morning bringing a mix of anticipation and unease, a restless heartbeat she couldn't ignore, as she moved through her routines with Thomas, preparing meals, tidying the house, and managing the ordinary chaos of family life. Yet every glance in Oliver's direction sparked a quiet thrill she struggled to control, a tender awareness of the bond they had acknowledged, fragile but undeniable. And even as she reminded herself of boundaries, of the life she had chosen with Thomas and the responsibility she bore as both wife and stepmother, she could not deny the subtle pull that lingered in every shared moment, the way his presence seemed to charge the air in a way no one else could. And she noticed the smallest gestures, the brush of his hand against hers when reaching for something, the way he smiled when he thought she wasn't looking, the way he lingered near her side while helping with simple chores, and each instance became a reminder of the delicate connection that had grown between them, a connection full of warmth, curiosity, and attention that was impossible to ignore. And one evening, as the sun dipped low and the golden light slanted across the kitchen, Lena found herself alone with Oliver again, preparing dinner while he leaned casually against the counter, his gaze occasionally drifting toward her as if he were searching for reassurance. And she realized how much she had come to treasure these quiet, intimate moments, moments that felt ordinary to anyone else but held a secret weight for them, the kind of weight that makes hearts beat faster, thoughts race, and emotions swell in ways that are both exhilarating and terrifying. And she felt a pang of guilt, knowing the lines they had agreed to honor, the invisible rules that governed their interaction. Yet the truth was undeniable, her feelings as real and complex as his, and she knew that ignoring them would only make the tension harder to bear. That acknowledgement, even silent and careful, was necessary to maintain trust, understanding, and emotional honesty. And as Oliver reached to wash the vegetables they were preparing together, their hands brushed briefly, a spark of warmth that neither could ignore, and Lena felt a shiver run through her, a mixture of longing, caution, and excitement, a reminder that their bond had grown into something profound, delicate, and infinitely complicated. And she struggled to focus on the task while also absorbing the electricity of the moment, the quiet intimacy of shared space, the rhythm of the chopping knife, the scent of garlic and onions mingling with the warmth of the kitchen. And she realized how small, ordinary moments could carry the heaviest emotional weight, how conversations, touches, and glances could define the space between hearts, how connection could exist without labels, without action, without acknowledgement, beyond recognition. And yet that recognition alone was transformative, powerful, and impossible to ignore. As the evening wore on, Oliver spoke quietly, almost as if testing the boundaries. "I keep thinking about that night, about what we said." And Lena felt her chest tighten, a mixture of apprehension and curiosity, because she had thought of it constantly, replayed it in her mind, analyzed every word, every glance, every pause, and she understood exactly what he meant. The way the conversation had lingered in their hearts, shaping interactions, coloring moments, creating a subtle tension that was as sweet as it was painful, tension that spoke of longing, care, and the complicated landscape of human emotion. and she responded with gentle calm, "I think about it too." And the simplicity of her words carried more meaning than either of them could fully articulate. A quiet acknowledgement of shared experience, of mutual understanding, of emotions that could not be ignored but needed careful handling, and Oliver's shoulders relaxed slightly, a small smile forming on his lips, tentative but real, a sign that the acknowledgement itself was enough to bridge the uncertainty, at least for the moment, and Lena felt a mixture of relief and exhilaration, knowing that they had navigated another step in their delicate emotional dance, and she also recognized that these interactions, while subtle, were shaping the bond between them, deepening connection, and teaching them patience, restraint, and the careful attention required to honor feelings without letting them disrupt lives. She watched him as he moved around the kitchen, noticing the way his eyes softened when he looked at her, the slight hesitation in his gestures, the quiet attentiveness that revealed both care and unspoken desire, and she felt an overwhelming mixture of emotions, longing, guilt, fascination, and tenderness, a complicated storm that made her heart ache and soar at the same time. And she reminded herself that attraction and emotion are not the same as action, that feeling deeply did not necessitate crossing boundaries, that one could cherish, care, and acknowledge without acting on every impulse, and yet the ache of emotion was undeniable, pressing against the walls of propriety, the silent pulse of hearts drawn together despite circumstance, and she realized that part of her wanted to reach out, to bridge the gap fully, but part of her understood that patience, restraint, and respect were essential, that the right moment, if it ever came, would require timing, awareness, and courage beyond mere desire. As they worked side by side, preparing dinner, the room quiet except for the chopping, the sizzling of the pan, and the occasional murmur of conversation, Lena felt a profound awareness of presence, of proximity, of the gentle friction of two hearts recognizing one another, and she noticed the smallest things, the way his hand lingered near hers for a fraction longer than necessary, the soft exhale when their eyes met, the subtle smile that communicated more than words could convey, and she understood that human connection often speaks in gestures, in silences, in shared moments, and that these interactions were as powerful as any spoken confession, shaping feelings, memories, and the growing intimacy between them, yet all within the boundaries of respect, subtlety, and emotional honesty. As the night deepened and the lights cast warm glows across the kitchen, Oliver finally spoke again, quieter this time. "I don't know what this means, but I can't stop thinking about it, about us." And Lena felt her pulse quicken, a rush of emotion that was thrilling and unnerving because she knew exactly how he felt, yet she also knew that acknowledging it required careful navigation, an emotional map drawn with patience, empathy, and integrity, and she responded softly, "We'll figure it out together." And the words, simple as they were, held the weight of understanding, acceptance, and cautious hope, a promise that neither of them had to face the uncertainty alone, that the connection, delicate and complex, could exist safely within the unspoken rules of family, love, and emotional responsibility, and she felt a gentle relief, a quiet warmth, and a surge of emotion that reminded her of the intensity of human feeling, the complexity of desire, and the tenderness of hearts navigating love in its many forms, unspoken, restrained, yet profoundly real. As they cleaned up the kitchen together, their hands occasionally brushing, eyes meeting, smiles exchanged, Lena realized that these ordinary actions carried extraordinary weight, that the rhythm of life, the simple acts of cooking, cleaning, talking, laughing were now infused with a new significance, a subtle emotional undercurrent that made each moment richer, more alive, more resonant, and she understood that their bond, complicated and nuanced, was growing stronger, deeper, yet tempered by awareness, care, and patience, a delicate balance between heart and mind, longing and propriety, and she felt a quiet pride in how they navigated it, a recognition of emotional maturity, and an understanding that sometimes, the slow, careful tending of feelings is more powerful than any overt gesture, any declaration, any rush of passion, because the slow unfolding of connection allows trust, respect, and understanding to take root, creating something lasting, meaningful, and profoundly human. And as the night drew to a close, the rain softened to a gentle drizzle, the kitchen quiet but for the hum of the refrigerator and the lingering warmth of shared presence, Lena and Oliver stood for a moment in silence, eyes meeting with unspoken words, hearts beating in quiet synchrony, a mutual understanding that they were bound together in emotion, care, and unacknowledged longing, and that even without action, even without immediate resolution, the acknowledgement itself was enough to sustain them, to connect them, to make them feel seen, understood, and alive. And Lena realized that this kitchen, these ordinary walls, had become a sanctuary of honesty, emotion, and quiet intimacy. A place where feelings could exist without fear, where hearts could communicate in ways words often failed, where the delicate dance of human connection unfolded in small gestures, silences, and subtle acknowledgments, shaping lives, memories, and the very essence of who they were. And she understood with clarity that no matter what the future held, no matter how complicated or uncertain, this moment, this bond, this awareness of each other would never fade, would never be forgotten, and would remain etched in her heart. As a testament to the quiet, profound, and unforgettable power of human emotion, longing, and connection, a reminder that sometimes love in all its forms exists not in actions, not in declarations, but in the tender acknowledgement of hearts meeting, understanding, and feeling deeply. And Lena felt that profound truth resonate through her entirely, leaving her both breathless and full, terrified and exhilarated, aware of the delicate, complex, beautiful landscape of feeling she now shared with Oliver. And as they finally said goodnight and she watched him leave the kitchen, her heart heavy yet light, she knew that this chapter was only beginning, that the story of their connection would continue to unfold with all the richness, complexity, and intensity that human hearts can hold, and that every future kitchen conversation, every shared glance, every subtle gesture would carry the weight of this moment, this understanding, this quiet but unforgettable bond that had been forged in honesty, respect, and the tender recognition of feeling. The days and nights that followed were filled with an unspoken tension that lingered in every glance, every shared silence, and every small gesture between Lena and Oliver, as if the kitchen had become a sanctuary of emotions too complicated to name yet too real to ignore. And even as she tried to focus on the routines of life, making meals, tidying the house, checking in with Thomas, managing the quiet chaos of family life, her thoughts kept drifting back to him, to the way his eyes held questions, to the subtle warmth in his smile, to the gentle tension that pulsed whenever they were near. And she realized that these moments of closeness, though fleeting and ordinary in appearance, carried a weight that was impossible to ignore, a weight of longing, connection, and emotional honesty that was transforming her heart in ways she hadn't anticipated. And she found herself thinking about him constantly, imagining what he was feeling, what he was thinking, the quiet ache of emotions that both thrilled and terrified her. And in the back of her mind she kept reminding herself that boundaries mattered, that patience was essential, that care and respect for the family she had committed to must guide every action, every word, every glance. Yet the ache of human connection was relentless, persistent, undeniable, and she knew that it could not simply be ignored, nor should it, because to feel deeply, even cautiously, is part of being alive, part of experiencing the rich tapestry of emotion that defines relationships and bonds between people. And one afternoon, as golden sunlight poured through the kitchen window, Oliver entered quietly, holding 2 mugs of tea, and handed one to her with a slight tremor in his hand. A gesture so simple yet so loaded with meaning that Lena felt her chest tighten with recognition, awareness, and longing all at once, and she realized that this small act was a continuation of their unspoken conversation, a way of acknowledging each other's feelings while remaining within the safe boundaries they had carefully maintained. And she smiled gently, appreciating the courage it had taken for him to do this, the awareness of the delicacy of their bond, and the care with which he approached every interaction, the subtlety and tenderness that spoke volumes without breaking the fragile balance of their household. And as they sipped their tea in silence, the warmth of the cups grounding them, the world outside moving at its usual pace, Lena felt a sense of connection, a quiet understanding, a gentle reassurance that even without explicit words, even without declarations or actions beyond what was appropriate, they could honor the bond forming between them, cherish it, and allow it to exist as a source of comfort, emotion, and emotional growth, a space where vulnerability could be expressed safely, feelings could be acknowledged, and hearts could feel fully, honestly, without fear of judgment or consequence. And as Oliver glanced up at her, his eyes soft, open, filled with unspoken words and emotions, Lena felt a rush of tenderness that made her catch her breath, a mixture of protectiveness, longing, and admiration. And she realized that the power of human connection is often found in these subtle moments, in the quiet acknowledgement of presence, in the sharing of space, in the gentle affirmations that hearts can understand without a single syllable spoken aloud. And she thought about the journey they had shared, from the first hesitant conversation In this very kitchen, to the slow unfolding of emotions, the careful navigation of boundaries, the recognition of attraction tempered by propriety, and the patient cultivation of trust, understanding, and emotional safety, and she felt a profound gratitude for the courage it had taken both of them to arrive at this point, to exist together in this delicate, complex space where feelings were recognized yet carefully held, where hearts could communicate in silence, in gestures, in glances, and where every ordinary moment had become extraordinary because of the shared emotional resonance between them. As the evening approached and the sky outside turned a soft pink with the setting sun, Oliver spoke, his voice low but steady. "Maybe we don't have to have all the answers right now," and Lena nodded, her heart lifting slightly at the simplicity and wisdom of his words, because she understood exactly what he meant, that love, longing, and human connection do not always require immediate resolution, that emotions can exist and be honored without hasty action, that hearts can feel fully while maintaining respect, patience, and awareness of the life they shared with Thomas and the boundaries that govern their interactions, and she realized that this was perhaps the most profound lesson of all, that acknowledging feelings, even quietly and cautiously, is a form of courage, honesty, and love, and that the presence of another soul, attuned to yours, can provide comfort, clarity, and a sense of being truly seen, even in the absence of conventional romance, physical intimacy, or dramatic declarations. And as they continued to sit together, sharing the quiet warmth of tea and companionship, Lena noticed the subtle changes in her own awareness, the way her heart responded to his presence, the way small touches, shared glances, and the sound of his voice could calm and excite her simultaneously, the way the ordinary kitchen transformed into a space of emotional revelation, of intimacy tempered by respect, of human connection at its most delicate and profound, and she understood that this was a rare and beautiful experience, one that did not require labels, immediate answers, or external acknowledgement, but existed entirely in the shared understanding between two hearts, an emotional resonance that could sustain them, nurture them, and shape the depth of their bond over time, allowing them to feel alive, human, and connected in ways that defied simple explanation. As the night deepened and the warm kitchen lights cast soft glows across their faces, Lena found herself reflecting on how far they had come, from hesitant steps into a difficult conversation, to days of careful navigation of emotion, to moments of subtle but profound connection that had become the lifeblood of their shared experience. And she realized that these moments, small and ordinary in appearance but monumental in emotional significance, had changed her in ways she had not anticipated, teaching her patience, restraint, empathy, and the power of silent understanding. And she felt a quiet pride in both of them for the courage it had taken to explore emotions responsibly, honestly, and with care, for the bravery it took to recognize feelings without acting recklessly, for the wisdom to understand that love and connection are not always about fulfillment but about presence, acknowledgement, and respect. And as Oliver finally rose to leave the kitchen, placing his empty mug in the sink with a quiet clink, he looked back at her, his eyes soft, warm, and open, and Lena felt her heart swell with a mixture of tenderness, longing, and reassurance, a recognition that this shared emotional journey, though complicated and delicate, was something rare, profound, and unforgettable, that the kitchen had witnessed the unfolding of hearts in a way that would stay with them forever, shaping the contours of their bond, the way they viewed each other, and the emotional landscapes they navigated together. And she understood that while life would continue with its routines, responsibilities, and challenges, this chapter, these moments, this shared understanding would remain, a quiet, beautiful, and transformative force in their lives. And she felt a gentle peace settle over her, knowing that connection, when nurtured with care, honesty, and empathy, can exist fully, deeply, and meaningfully even in complexity, and that their bond, delicate yet strong, restrained yet passionate in its subtlety, would continue to grow, sustain, and shape them, providing both comfort and challenge, excitement and reflection, longing and satisfaction, a testament to the quiet, enduring, and unforgettable power of human hearts meeting, understanding, and feeling profoundly. And as the rain returned softly outside, a gentle backdrop to the warmth of the kitchen and the quiet intensity of their shared experience, Lena realized with clarity and calm that this kitchen chat, this entire emotional journey, was not just a fleeting moment but a turning point, a foundation for emotional intimacy, understanding, and connection that would remain a part of them forever. A memory and a lesson in the beauty of patience, the courage to acknowledge feeling, and the quiet, extraordinary power of hearts that care deeply without overstepping, and she knew that in that knowledge, in that understanding, there was both comfort and exhilaration, a quiet promise that connection, honesty, and emotional bravery are the truest forms of love, and that sometimes the simplest spaces, a kitchen, a shared cup of tea, a moment of mutual recognition, can hold the most profound, unforgettable, and transformative experiences, leaving hearts forever changed, quietly full, and beautifully aware of the power of human connection.